Alright, so in this video I'm going to talk about web browsing and privacy. And I know a lot of people are going to get triggered by this because this channel is called Learn Google Spreadsheets, but I'm going to be talking about web browsing and privacy. And if you really want to talk about Google Sheets, there's going to be a little bit Google Sheets involved in this too. So you'll see how I'll be using Google Sheets to illustrate what you should be aware of when you're browsing the web. So first of all, if you're somebody who's watching this video, it's not meant to scare you. It's mostly just being aware of what are the things that could happen when you're on a web page. And the things I'm going to be talking about are not like the hacker stuff. So I'm not going to be talking about things when you get hacked or somebody tries to actually hack you. I'm just going to talk about all the basic stuff that's built in that could be possibly actively happening as you're browsing different websites. So to illustrate all of this, I'm going to do a basic web app using Google Sheets as the storage mechanism. If you're on a different website, it's not going to be storing that in Google Sheets. It will be storing it probably in some sort of database, but it doesn't really matter. So let me just open the script editor and fire up a basic web app here. So I'm not going to be explaining too much about what I'm doing here. I have videos covering how to build web apps and things like that. Even though if you like web app videos, you'll probably learn a couple of things here. I'll just go to Bootstrap and put something in here. And this is where I'm going to do the JavaScript. Now let's just do something like an example with a web form. So I'm going to go back here and grab a web form. And I'll just keep this simple. We'll just do a button with one input field. Let's just publish this web app. And this is what it looks like. So basically, it's a very basic form. There's not much here, so we could have more fields here. But what are some main things I want to talk about? So one of the things I want to talk about here is that when most people go to a web page, their default assumption is if there's a form and I go in here and let's say I type something, we assume that nobody has this information until you click submit. You have to be aware of that if you go to a web page and you type anything anywhere inside of the web page, that information could be going someplace without you actually actively clicking on a button. So let me demo that. So for example, we have this input box. Let me just give this an ID so it's easier to work with, email. And this is where you're going to be typing, even though you could even intercept whatever you're typing when you're not particularly typing in that field. But right now, let's just talk about that. What I can do now, I can just assign some event listeners to that input. And the ID for that is this email. So now I could be listening to different events on that particular input. Now there are different events that you could listen to, but for now I'm just going to use input event. And here I'll just do a callback function. So this is what we're going to be doing once somebody types something in this input box. So what I can do, I can just send some information back to the server as soon as we type something in this box. So to do that, let me just go create this function. So that will be my add data function, and I'm going to go back to this and we'll just send that information here. So now I'm going to go back to that link and refresh this. Let me actually run this really quickly here so it won't complain about this. Okay, so that's that. Let me just also check here. Let's just spell that correctly. So that should take care of this. And oh, by the way, this needs to be a row. Okay, I think that should take care of this. Hopefully I didn't do any mistakes. Let me just take a look. So this is what we expect. So you go to this page, you think that when you type in this, you have to click on submit to send this info, right? Now let's go check what happened in our backend. Now look at that. Every keystroke that was done in there, it was right now captured in my application. Now I'm thinking I didn't submit anything. I can go here and erase this back. And maybe I'm just playing around. Now let's go check this out again. And you'll see anything I do is captured. So you need to be aware that when you go to a web page, as soon as you start typing anything, don't assume that that information stays with you, because it could be really just sent to some backend and stored in some sort of database. Like in this case, I'm just using, again, Google Sheets, but it's usually going to be some other database, which is going to be a lot more efficient and faster in doing this, by the way. And also, I don't have to do this with every keystroke. That's what I did in this particular case, right? You may want to just get the information maybe every 2 seconds or every 3 seconds or something like that. But that shows you that this is possible. You start typing in a box, the information travels. Now, with this come a lot of other things that could be captured when you're on a page. So, for example, let me just open the console. So, in the console, we have what's called a window object. The window object is basically everything available about the window, I guess, the browser window. So in this, we have, for example, navigator object. In this navigator object, you have a bunch of methods. So for example, see, there's the app name, app code name, app version, all these other things. So for example, if I look at this app code name, see that is Mozilla for me. And then I can look up some other things about this. So for example, I can look up the platform and see it says Mac Intel. So there are all this information inside of this navigator objects that could be retrieved and saved. So for example, let's say I want to know which system you were on when you were typing all of these things that we store in here, right? So now I'm going to go back to my application and I'm going to change a couple of things here. So in addition to email, let's say we also want the platform. Let me just apply it here too. And I'll just do this. So again, I'm going to go back to this application and reload this. And now again, I'm going to start typing in here. So let me just clear this spreadsheet first of all. Okay, getting back to this. So now I go here and type. So let's go check out what happened. So now, not only I'm getting what's typed, I'm also getting what system you were on when you were doing this. Obviously, you could capture all those things in that navigator object. So for example, if you think about Google Analytics, when you go to a web page, if you ever read Google Analytics reports, you'll probably see like what browser somebody was on, what system they were on. So this is how all of that information is captured by using all of these JavaScript methods. Now, there are a lot of valid reasons why your application may need this information. So you may need to know which browser somebody is on in that application to make sure that some parts of your application work properly, because different browsers handle different things in a different ways. But it could also be used for tracking. So we grab the information, we send it to our backend. So I'm not talking if this is legal or illegal. I'm just giving you the technical perspective of what is possible when you go to a web page. Now, we could also store other information. So for example, let's look at maybe the screen, right? In here, we have all these different methods. See, we have like available height of the screen, the width of the screen, so all this type of things. So let's just do something like, let's keep it simple. So see the height, we can also do the width. obviously, if I can get that here, then I can also, as you probably noticed, I can also store this in the backend. So I'm going to grab this and let's just add it to our application here. Save it. Now if I refresh, now we go to this page and we start typing. And we also get our window sizes here. Now you'll notice like that didn't match what I was doing in here in the screen. And that's because when you're working in this app scripts environment, we use an iframe that's deployed inside of this mainframe that we have. Now, if you're on a regular website, it will be pretty much what I get here. Now in this one, because we're in this iframe situation, we get the iframe size, which is that. So now again, let's go back and, a couple of more keystrokes. See if I resize the window, now I get that window size. Now you can see how I can capture the screen size as well, and a lot of other detailed information about your browser. Now, on its own, all of these different pieces of information, they don't seem that bad, with exception of what you type is being sent without your knowledge, I guess. But other than that, all of this doesn't seem that bad until you look at it in a different way, because by itself, each one of these pieces of information may not seem that bad for privacy. However, if we store a bunch of different pieces of information, like what system you're on, what browser you're using, what's the height of your screen, what's the width of your screen, and the usual things you would think that you could store, like which page you're on, all those things I'm not even talking about in this particular case. Even if somebody doesn't know what IP you're from, that combination of all these different things is likely to be unique to you. So by looking at that combination of things, you could very well figure out that it's the same person by just looking at, okay, this is the system, this is the window size, this is the version of the browser they have, because you can even get that type of information. This is the version of Flash you have installed. So all this type of information is possible to get from basically just using all this window object, navigator object, etc. Basically what's available in a browser. And grab that information and send it back to the backend. If somebody says that you have a black hat, well, you might say that's not that bad, right? There is a lot of people walking around with black hats. But now you're adding, okay, so you have a black hat, you have a long nose, and then you have like white shoes and 17 other different things. All of a sudden, all of those things together describe you. So that same thing could happen here in the digital world. So you could be saying, okay, so that's fine. Now, it seems like if I don't type anything in the box, then nothing could be collected, right? In that case, if I'm not typing anything actively in one of the boxes. Not really. So let's just do something else here. So let me just keep this one the way it is. And let's add another one. And I'm going to keep most of this the same. I'm just going to remove the email out of here. And then I'll go to my HTML here and let's just create another function here. And this one I'm not going to assign to a particular element. What I will do instead, I will just do it on page load. And I'll run that new function right here. And we're not going to be sending the email. Now here, I could just do this on the page load. Just like this. So let's just go to this. This is our database. And let's just refresh this page. And I don't do anything on this page. So I'm just going to go here. See? The page loaded. We sent that information back here anyways. Now we could also actively keep collecting information about this. So for example, let's just go to our HTML and right here, instead of just running this only on the page load, let's actually do some sort of set interval. And I'm going to move this over here. So basically what I'm going to do here, I just want to actively keep running this every 2 seconds after the page loads. So I'm going to save this. So far we have what we have. Now let's just refresh this. So now I'm on this page. Let's just see what happens. See, as we're in there, we keep collecting this information every 2 seconds. Now, if I'm here and I start resizing my window, I go back. See, now we collect that information. So I'm not really doing anything, but that information can still be actively collected. Let me close this. Now, we could also do some other things here. So let's just do this. So let's say you are just scrolling your mouse over different things. And again, if you're scrolling, you just think if you didn't send this, then it's not sent, right? Nobody knows. Well, information could still be sent as you're doing this. So let's do an example of that. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that script that keeps sending everything. Well, actually, I'm just going to comment it out. So right now, instead of doing this, let's just get to the button. So I'm just going to add an ID for this button. And then we're going to get that button. Now, to that button, we're going to add an event listener. Instead of input, I'm going to do something like mouse over. And then I'm still going to do what I was doing here. So I'll just save this. And then now let's just erase all of this stuff. I have to reopen that page. So now it shouldn't be logging anything because I commented that section. But I go back here. So once I'm on this page, I'm just going to go here and roll over this. I'm not clicking on that. Let's go check what happened. See, that was sent. Now we can also look where the mouse is located and set that information as well. So not only the screen size, we could also say your mouse was like in this position relative to the screen. So let's go back and cancel this. And I'm going to go back to this script. And now instead of adding the event listener to the page load event, I'm going to add it to mouse move event. So this is going to have an event that comes in here. And basically that event is going to have some available things like the position of the mouse, for example. Let me just do this. Let me just console log that E. And for now, I'll just comment this part. And this should be not the document, probably the window. Okay, there it is. So now we're going to do a mouse move. So basically when the mouse moves, we would like to log this. So right now we're just logging in a browser. We're not sending it back to the database. Let's make sure we clear this. So there's nothing else here. So that's good. So now I'm going to reopen this, refresh. And let me just open the console log. Now, if you check it out, we have all these mouse moves. Now, if I go back here and roll over again, see there is just more. So every time I go and roll the mouse over, see these things are happening. But the main thing I want to show you here is that now this event object has all these things inside of it that, again, we have access to. We have the target element. So if we go a little higher, see, for example, over here, I was rolling over that input field. So now that target element is going to show what we're rolling over. And then it's also having this client X, client Y. So basically we have the position of the mouse as well. That means that we can now go and store that information if we wanted to. And let's just get this out of here and put it in a separate function here. So we'll just set this in this info object and we'll basically just send it over to our database every 2 seconds. Okay, so that's that. We need to send that info object. We need to accept all those parameters like the X, Y. Let's just maybe set better parameters. Now let's just accept those in this function, this X, Y, the platform, and L. This should all be equals. Okay, let's go back and try this again. I'm rolling over a couple of things. Let's see if we're logging any of this. Notice I'm not actively clicking on anything. Let's go back and see if this works. And it does. See, it logs like what was the position of the mouse? What was the system? What was the element we're rolling over? So we had over the form, then we had over the button. I had it over different elements, the input element at some point. And you could grab different information about those elements too. But what I'm trying to show you is that even though as a user, we're not actively interacting right now with anything other than just pointing our mouse in different places, our information could still be traveling and going to some backend and being saved. Now imagine if you're logged in right now, then in addition to saving all of this information, it's also probably saving who you are. So again, I'm not trying to scare you with this. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get you informed. What are some things that could be happening when you're on the page? So don't assume that if you're on the page and you're not actively sending something to someplace, it's not actually going anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that every website you go on, this is what's happening and they're just grabbing all your information and sending it over, but it could happen. So I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.